Thank you. This study is called A Study of Ecosystem Service Provision in Tropical Marine Environments and its Connection to Habitat Types in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. I'd like to thank Jane Addison and Graham Cumming for their support throughout this project. Marine ecosystem services sustain nearly 1 billion people, and with expected rates of coastal degradation, this is expected to impact over 1.3 billion people by 2050. In the tropics in particular, there is a lack of study available on connections between habitat types and ecosystem service supply. This gap in the literature informed our objectives of wanting to obtain a greater understanding into how and where ecosystem services are provided by specific tropical marine habitat types. Once refined, this approach has the potential to be used as a management decision-making tool. For example, it could be used on the Great Southern Barrier Reef and the Southern Plans of Management as a tool that better connects human and ecological values into management. This study involved a literature review component and also a spatial mapping component. We started with a tropically focused marine literature review and then conducted further searches on marine environments globally to ensure that ecosystem services that are present but not necessarily represented adequately in the tropical literature were represented in our spatial mapping component. And then, yes, we conducted our spatial analysis of where ecosystem services are located on the Great Barrier Reef. In our results, we found that authors commonly connected ecosystem services to habitat types to services that possessed monetary values. For example, income generation from fisheries, tourism, and coastal protection was a commonly discussed regulation and maintenance services. Services that possess less clear value metrics, for example, regulation and maintenance services that are dispersed across space, were less commonly discussed, and also less tangible cultural ecosystem services. We perhaps attribute this to the framework, the CICES framework that we used, and future studies could use, for example, nature's contribution to people as a framework to assess this connection. The habitat types that were typically connected to ecosystem services were the broad habitat types of mangrove, seagrass, and coral reefs, with few studies making connections between habitat types and ecosystem services at finer spatial scales. For example, differences in ecosystem service supply between inner and outer shore reefs. It is suggested that future studies study this at finer spatial scales, given, for example, fish abundance will vary quite dramatically across a spatial gradient. In our mapping, through connecting our results from the tropical literature search to the Great Barrier Reef, we found that ecosystem services are located in close proximity to coastlines and human populations. This result may reflect the general bias in the literature towards ecosystem services along coastlines, but is also strongly reflective of access as an influence of ecosystem service use. In conclusion, we suggest that future studies of this nature incorporate multiple strands of evidence, for example, traditional ecological knowledge, biophysical metrics, and also human perceptions. For the habitat mapping component, we found that habitat quality, seasonality, and also animal migration patterns are useful for moving beyond simply a presence-absence model of this type of study. And once refined, this approach has the strong capacity to be used as a management decision-making tool, for example, on the Great Southern Plans of Management, as a way that better connects human and ecological values and that can avoid scale mismatches between management and ecological processes that are occurring. Thank you.